Hi everybody, this is Mr. Mike, the dinosaur guy for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center with another episode of Dino-A-Day. Today we learn about a sauropod that is unique from other sauropods in several ways. And first thing is its name for the longest time I pronounced incorrectly. I referred to it as Plateosaurus, because the word is spelled P-L-A-T-E like plate and then O-saurus, so I'm like Plateosaurus. It's Plateosaurus, and this is what he or she looked like. You'll notice first off that Plateosaurus, at least in as far as this model is concerned, moved around bipedally. Bi means two, ped means feet, moved around on 2 feet. But did it in fact do that? Well, I don't know. Let's take a closer look. Striking head. Look at those interesting hands. Very different than a typical sauropod because it had 5 digits, and on 3 of the fingers it had long claws. And it actually had what we thought was distinct to humans, an opposable thumb, or at least one of the things that made humans different. So it kind of could move its thumb like this. Whereas most animals are sort of relegated to this, it could move it around a little bit. So that made it interesting, and the fact that it, we believe it moved bipedally, at least most of us believed it moved bipedally. Let's take a look at this. Its feet, and this you can almost tell by the model. They said the word is digitigrade. Digitigrade refers to the toes, and it means that it moved around on its toes. So there is speculation whether it moved around on all fours or walked on 2 legs, or did it rear up and scamper around basically on its toes when it was in danger. Well, let's learn a little bit more about it. First of all, Plateosaurus means broad or flat lizard, and right off the bat we have some controversy. They're not sure when they named the animal what they were referring to, so some interpretations call it broad lizard, other interpretations call it flat lizard. And they thought that, well, maybe it has to do with particular bones, and they were flattened, or they were flat in their shape, so we call it flat lizard. Unfortunately, those bones had not been discovered when the thing was named, so that theory goes out the window. So we're just going to call it the broad flat lizard. Discovered in 1834 by Johann Fredrickson Engelhardt in Germany. He was a physician. It was described 3 years later, 1837, by Hermann von Meyer. It was called an early sauropodomorph. Love that word, sauropodomorph. So it was a sauropod, but it was morphing. Okay, sauropodomorph, great word. Now, this, of course, was discovered before the word dinosaur was invented, which was 1842 by Dr. Richard Owen. So they didn't call it a dinosaur. They just called this thing Plateosaurus. And then later they come up with the word dinosaur. So when Richard Owen, the famous Dr. Richard Owen, which came up with the word dinosaur, when he was formulating his idea that there were these giant beasts that walked around and we're going to call them dinosauria, they knew that Plateosaurus existed, but there wasn't enough material of it for him to feel confident to make it part of the big 3, which was Megalosaurus, number 1. What was number 2? Iguanodon. And 3, the much forgotten about Haleosaurus. He used those 3 animals to come up with the word dinosaur and come up with the theory that these things walked around before we did. Since the time of the original discovery in 1834, they found a lot more skeletons. In fact, the year was let's see. I have it here somewhere. Yeah, there have been discoveries throughout, and some of the more recent ones, 2007, they discovered some interesting things. But there was a another treasure trove of these skeletons that were found of Plateosaurus. And they found a number of them here, a number of them there, and now we have over 100 different sized species, or different sized specimens, I should say, of Plateosaurus, from adults the whole way down to adolescents and younger ones. Interesting thing. All these animals were discovered in different areas, most of them in Europe, and some of these animals in different rock strata were smaller. So we say that its size was between 16 and 33 feet. Now that is a big wide range. Usually we say this thing was around 30, 35 feet long, or 40, 45 feet, or 10 to 12 feet. This is 16 to 33. And the reason there's such a wide gap in terms of how large did this animal grow is we know that some of the animals that were only 15, 16 feet long were fully grown adults. And then the other ones that were 30, 33 feet long were fully grown adults. And yet, they're the same genus and species, which is Plateosaurus engelharti, named after Johann Fredrickson Engelhart, the man that originally discovered them. So, how do we account for this discrepancy in its size? Well, this is kind of weird. We think that the ones that were only around 15, 16 feet long were actually dwarfs. Fully grown Plateosauruses, but they were dwarfs compared to the 33-footers. So there you have it, the first dwarf dinosaur that I've ever come across. And now it's very well known because we have at least 100 specimens, and we can study the different, the different physiological things that take place at different ages. The thing lived somewhere in the neighborhood of 214 to 204 million years ago. And as I mentioned, it was an early sauropodomorph. So now let's talk about some of the other controversies. First, did it in fact go up on two legs? Well, virtually every single time you see a sauropod that it's reared up on its hind legs with these decent sized arms, little tiny head, you can recognize it as being Plateosaurus. However, when they took a very, very close look at its hand, and I'll do this again with you. Where is it? Let me get my pencil out of the way. When you take a look at the hand, okay, there's speculation. Could this hand, in fact, support its weight if it were down on all fours? And the reason being, it comes back to that little opposable thumb. First of all, when it walked like this, it looked like its palms were facing together, and it may not have been able to efficiently rotate the palm like this and then go down on all fours. This is one of the theories. So they're saying, well, how could this animal walk on all fours at all if it couldn't rotate its hands down? So that's speculation saying it spent a lot of time up on two legs. And then there are those that say it spent all its time on four legs. So some controversy. It is the first dinosaur skeleton ever discovered in Norway. Up until that time, Norway was barren of dinosaur discoveries. And luckily, they found this little foot knuckle, and it turned out to belong to Plateosaurus. So Plateosaurus, the folks of Norway can now salute the Plateosaurus as their first dinosaur. Another thing about the physiology of the animal, it had a lower jaw that was kind of curved down, and it's the end of its its top jaw curved down to meet it, and they sort of said it looked like it kind of smiling. So there you have the smiling dinosaur. Okay, so we know how big it was. We know it had these interesting hands with opposable thumbs, so it could grasp pretty well. Why did it grasp? It probably grasped the trees and the leaves, and probably did at least rear up on its hind legs to eat, but did it walk around that way? We may never know. So, I want to thank you so much for tuning into these. We do this every day, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. And we, of course, have a brand new poem all about Plateosaurus. So often when a dinosaur is found, its bones reveal a fact or two about it, but sometimes they conceal This beast, Plateosaurus, was so kind to tell us that it walked about upon its toes. Its feet were hardly flat. But still, paleontologists do wonder if it could stand up and go bipedal or stay down and say, I'm good. Most every mount of this old guy portrayed him standing up, but recently some minds have changed. Some think a bit abrupt. The evidence is based upon his hands. Could they support his formidable body weight, or did they come up short? His palms, they both faced inward, like preparing for a clap. Some say his hands would not rotate and lead to a mishap. And on his pair of grasping hands, some fingers had long claws. But we're not sure about the kind of damage they could cause. The fact that both his thumbs could move opposably is neat, but did that help or hinder if he used those hands as feet? Another trait about him that's had minimal dispute, his lower jaw curved down and made him smile kind of cute. We know that he had sturdy teeth above his rounded chin, and hopefully he hid his food before he'd crack a grin. The beast Plateosaurus has supplied so much detail because we've got 100 specimens to tell his tale. But even though we have all this to study and review, on whether he would stand or not, we need another clue. The Plateosaurus for Mr. Mike's Dino-A-Day, episode number 39, brought to you by the Mechanicsburg Learning Center. We will do it again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks for sharing this. Thanks for going to Mr. Mike Sgrignoli's YouTube page and watching them. And we'll see you again very soon. Until then, have a dinorific day.